we tend to have friendship that revolves or looks familiar with those things, because we tend to associate ourselves with things that are more familiar or things that are familiar. So hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you just seen me, hi, my name is SINDYAKPOLO. Good to have you here. You're most definitely welcome. Today, just like you clicked on the title and the thumbnail, today I'm going to be talking about generational patterns or cycles. I talked about generational patterns in one of my videos, which I'm going to be linking up on the cards. And today is a collaboration video, and today is in collaboration with Serah Donald. And if you don't know Serah Donald, she is an amazing YouTuber and a friend. She is amazing, she's knowledgeable, she has a lot to share. I love her so much. And today we are collaborating and sharing our thoughts on generational patterns and generational cycles and how it affects our daily lives. Serah Donald is also going to be sharing how it affects our lives regarding or relating to finances. Head over to her channel. After watching this video, I'm going to be leaving the name of her channel on the screen and also the link to the video in the description box below, so make sure you go check it out after watching this video. All right, so in this video I'm going to be specifically talking about generational patterns, how it affects us in terms of our friendship and family name or family identity. And in my previous video I went in depth explaining how to break the cycle and how to identify these patterns, but in this video I'm specifically talking about how it affects our lives in specific areas. Sometimes many people don't want to identify themselves with family, especially with their family names, regarding based on past events that happened, or based on things that occur, because they don't want to associate themselves with those things. That's another way of breaking the cycle, or not letting those things that happened in the family history break the name. We often wonder why sometimes some people don't help us when we ask for help or when we seek for help. That's because sometimes it's regarding or relating to our family name or family identity, because of past conflicts that both families might have had in the past. And sometimes you hear when family tells you, or when your parents informs you not to associate yourself with this particular family, or not to associate yourself with this kind of particular people, based on the relationship they've had or based on the event they've had in the past. They don't want their lineage, or they don't want people around them to associate with those people because of the event that happened. Also, sometimes some families inherit enemies, and when we grow up as adults, we tend to inherit our family enemies based on what we've been told while we were much younger, or while we were younger, because maybe something happened in the past. Again, I'm going to be using this narrative. Maybe something happened in the past and our family has told us not to associate with this person, and because of that association or the event that has happened, we tend to inherit those enemies. And you see those things pass on to us as well, because with those things, those are repetitive patterns or cycles that we tend to associate ourselves with. And when we grow up as adults, we also repeat that same thing, and we pass it down to our children, or pass it down to our generations. Likewise, we also take up the same belief as well, and likewise our children. Sometimes these things live on to us. Sometimes even when we have friends, we like to associate ourselves with a particular type of friends, and we get so used to those particular people that we have as friends because of the relationship we have with those people that are our friends. Even when we have another type of friendship, we tend to have friendship that revolves or looks familiar with those things, because we tend to associate ourselves with things that are more familiar or things that are familiar. And you notice why sometimes some people, they get so comfortable around some particular things, and you from the outside, you notice or you see patterns that are related or the same, or you see repetitive patterns that are the same. Sometimes you have a particular friendship or relationship, and because you have that type of friendship relationship, you tend to attract the same type of people. Let's say, for example, have you heard this narrative, hurt people hurt people? Yes, because if you're hurt, you're also gonna hurt somebody, and those are the type of people you're also gonna be attracted, or those are the people you attract. You attract people that are going to hurt you, and you also hurt people as well. So it's just like a repetitive pattern or cycle that revolves around you. Sometimes some of our dreams are not achieved, not because we cannot achieve them, but because of your family beliefs and limitations. They are stopping you or keeping you to dwell or settle with the bare minimum, or even find comfort around around what looks familiar. The same applies to when we're looking for jobs. Sometimes we attract the exact same type of job. Maybe you are, because this is the type of job you are so familiar with, and this is the kind of job you are so comfortable doing. When you seek on other job opportunities, you tend to look for the same type of job that relates to your comfortability zone or relates to your comfortable zone. These are things that are repetitive, and sometimes we ignore or we don't even know these things. Sometimes when people ask us if we want to be like our parents, and you hear the narrative where people would say, oh no, I don't want to be like my parents, oh I want to be like my parents, or oh no, I don't want to be like my dad, or oh no, I don't want to be like my mom. When you take note of you answering that question, that is your reflex speaking, because there is something that you've identified that you either want or you either don't want any longer, and that is like a wake-up call or an awareness state. So let's take for example, there is this story in the Bible. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with this, the story of David and Saul's son Jonathan. And we all know that King Saul was a king, and David was later crowned a king. And Saul, I'm not going to explain deep dive to the Bible, but I'm just using this as a pinpoint to explain where I'm coming from. So Saul informing Jonathan to gather the army, they were gonna plot to unalive David, and Jonathan happened to be David's best friend. Jonathan had to inform his friend David that this is what my father is plotting against you. Run away or run for your life, which David listened and he ran away for his life. And if you read further down the Bible, you will notice that Jonathan and David, they had this relationship. They built this relationship that they were so close to each other that even when Jonathan passed, David still looked for Jonathan's son to help him, which was Mephibosheth, to help him. And you notice that those are repetitive things. Like you notice, because of the previous help that has happened, David now decided to return the favor to Jonathan's family. Now, these are the ways generational cycles or patterns happens to us, because sometimes some things that have been done in the past by families, we tend to hold on to those things, and we either live with those things and still dwell on the past, or decide to break the cycle. Now, because of the singular reason Jonathan refused to identify himself with his family, Saul, he set himself apart, he mingled with David, and because of that, his entire family and generation, they got help from David. Now, I'm using this as an example, not because I want to explain the Bible. I'm sure a lot of people might be watching this and are not Christians, but I'm not explaining the Bible. I'm only giving this as a narrative, because even in the Bible, we tend to see some of the generational patterns or generational cycles that happens in the family. I'm sure a lot of us want to identify ourselves with Abraham and say Abraham's blessings are mine, or sometimes we want to identify ourselves with Solomon and say Solomon's wealth, or pray to God and say, oh God, I want Solomon's wealth, or bless me with the wisdom of Solomon and bless me with the riches or blessings of Abraham. In Jonathan's case, there are two options that are going to play. If Jonathan had returned the exact same favor or identity his father had, if he had not informed his friend David about what his father Saul is planning or plotting against David, would he have gotten the help from David? No. But because he returned it, he got the help from David. He identified himself with the blessings of David, and also he did so by breaking a cycle which he no longer wanted to identify with. And sometimes, or this video is coming to you because it just takes one person in the family to break free from the family cycles or the family identity. What you need to know is how you present yourself to the world is your identity, is your armor. Do not lose it. Don't be afraid to walk away from what looks familiar, especially what costs you pain. Now, I'm also going to be using another example of family patterns, or how they affect our lives. And there is this movie, it's a series actually that I saw recently. It's on Netflix. I'm sure a lot of you must have seen it. If you haven't, please go watch it. Now, in this movie, the title of the series is Kaleidoscope. This involves two families. I'm gonna be using the two families scenario. So let's say, for example, one of the families name is Mark and the other family is Simon. So let's use Simon and Mark for example. So Mark and Simon, they are serial thieves. I'm explaining with the movie, but I'm using the Mark and the Simon as example. So Simon always brings deals to Mark, and Mark always executes the deal. But there was a case where Mark decided he wanted to leave doing it, but Simon said, okay, after this one, we're gonna stop doing this. But Mark eventually, when they had a deal and decided to go for their operation, I'm sure Mark's daughter must have known that her father this is what her father is doing. But if she doesn't know, that's the case. But in the movie, I'm sure she must have known. So in the movie, there was this club the wife worked. So the daughter went into the safe or something, and she hid there. I think she was trying to open the safe or something. I think it was a close. I can't actually remember because it's been weeks I saw the movie. I saw the series, and she was caught trying to break into the safe, and they alerted them and informed the wife not to bring her daughter to a place of work, which is Mark's wife. And Mark got angry. He saw something the treasury item on the magazine of the club, and they decided they were going to set for an operation to do that, which Simon agreed, and they all went there. And eventually, and before that, Mark was asked not to visit there any longer because it created a scene. Now, I'm not explaining the movie, the series. I'm just trying to draw up some point. And Mark and Simon decided to carry out the operation in there, and eventually it went successful. But something happened. Mark lost his family, he lost his wife, and in the event of him losing his wife, he got arrested while in the process. And now he got arrested. He went to jail for some years, and in jail he discovered that Simon was free, was never caught, and his daughter, on the other hand, was taken care of. And Simon also helped his daughter, or assisted his daughter. But Mark, on the other hand, had revenge for Simon. Even when Mark came out of jail, he decided to plot to carry out his revenge on Simon. He tracked his daughter and found out that his daughter was working with Simon, and he eventually was plotting on an operation to attack Simon's office, because Simon's office was had a vote or something, and his daughter was together with him. But the operation went smoothly. Did he succeed in getting those items? No, he didn't, because his daughter was helping the actual owners of the items they were gonna steal. And in that scenario, the daughter herself, she has identified with something from the family that she no longer wants to associate herself with, or she doesn't want to identify herself with. But let's say, for example, now that the daughter agreed with the operation and assisted or helping her father successfully carry out the operation. Did she continue with the cycle? Yes, because she is also going to be labeled as a thief, and she also gave birth to a child, and that knowledge or that identity is also going to pass down to the child and also pass down to generation and generation. But the parent did not even know what he is doing to the child, because he thought he was doing what he was doing was helping the child in that instance, but it is something that the child is going to live on and also pass down to generations and pass down to generations. Now, the thing with identity or family or generational patterns is these are things that are passed down, that we constantly live with, that are passed down from generation to generation, and it becomes a repeated family cycle. Sometimes a lot of us, we've had favors from families, or we've had favors from people helping us based on family name or based on family identity. Let's say, for example, if an Otedola or a Dangote helps you or gives you a note to go for a job interview or go for a job, and you pass down that paper that was given to you by an Otedola or by a Dangote, what is that passing on to? That is passing on to based on generation or based on identity. Because of the singular name of Otedola or singular name of Dangote, you've associated with yourself with either of those names, and the person you're passing that paper to would listen to you or would either help you because of that name, or would give you the job because of that name and or because of that identity. And people don't even know that sometimes our names or identity, they are either going to cause us a huge deal in life. They are either going to break or make our game and be a game changer in our lives. And you choose today what you want to pass down to your generation. Do you want to remain in the same family identity that is not beneficial to your generation, or that is not going to be beneficial to your generation? Or do you want to change the identity to make your generation a better reflection of who you are? Sometimes our family repeated cycle can happen based on what we've been told, or based on what we know, or based on the belief, or based on what you want to identify with living the family name. So today you can decide to take a bold step to changing the narrative of living a family name that causes you pain or discomfort. Sometimes you wonder why some people that you've known for a really long time, they decide to change a certain name, or they decide to change their name, or they get excited to change their name or change their identity. And sometimes because we're so used to a particular thing or a particular identity or a particular way of identifying these persons, we get so stuck up on that, and we don't want to identify or relate with the new identity or the new name identity they've decided to reflect on. Have you ever wondered or heard people talk and say, I want to be the first person in my family to get this thing, or I want to be the first person in my family to travel abroad. I want to be the first person in my family to buy a car. I want to be the first person in my family to buy a house. And these are things that people are trying to break free from a certain generational cycle or patterns, because they've not taken note of what their family identity is or what their family patterns is, and they've noticed that not many people in their family have gotten this far, and they have decided that they want to set a new identity for the next generation, thereby causing them to single out themselves to making a change in the family. Sometimes even when you apply to some schools, or when you apply to schools, you get asked the question, if you're a first generation, that means if you're the first person in your family to attend the school, or if you're the first person in your family to go to college. And sometimes some people, they don't even take note of these things, because some families, there are a lot of things, there are some of these burdens that we need to break from the family, that we need to not identify with, or we need to stop in the family. And these things go on to really long lists. Like, some families' patterns or cycles are different from other families' patterns or cycles. Some people's families or cycles are areas they want to break. Like, say, I want to be the first person in my family to go to school. I want to be the first person in my family to buy a car. Those are cycles that people want to break, and they no longer want to identify themselves with those things, or with that identity based on where the family is at, or where the family was, because they've decided that I am coming to a new level of self-awareness, so I want to identify myself in a different way. I want to change the narrative for my generation. Sometimes these little things, or these things, are things that we actually don't even take note of. We decide today the patterns in your family you want to identify with, and the patterns you don't want to identify with, and note the identity you've chosen. These are and many more patterns or cycles that occur, or that are in our lives and generations, that we need to start identifying and start taking notes to see the areas where we need to break free from. Sometimes even in friendship, we get so used to some certain patterns or certain persons that we don't even know that this person is causing us discomfort. And sometimes even when the person is causing us discomfort, but because we are so used to that particular person, or because we are so used to having that particular person in our lives, we tend to ignore some of those patterns because of what looks familiar, or because it is familiar. And today I just want to put this word out there: never be afraid to walk away from what is familiar or what looks familiar, especially if it causes you pain. Now, I'm saying this especially with friendship. Friendships plays an important role in our lives, and we need to take note of these things. Have you ever heard this narrative, like minds attract? You attract the exact same people who you chose to identify with or you've identified with, which sometimes it can be good, sometimes it can be bad. Now, depending on the kind of identity you've chosen, those are the kind of people you're going to attract. And even when you're picking or choosing your friends, the kind of identity you give is going to reflect to the kind of friends you have around you or the kind of friends you've chosen. Do you want to continue to identify with patterns or cycles that are familiar, that causes you pain, or do you want to break free from those cycles or identity to welcome new life into you? Now, choose today where you want to identify with or what you want to identify with. And just a close up for this video, don't be afraid to walk away from what looks familiar, especially with friendship. I'm talking about this. I'm saying this in the friendship context. Don't be afraid to walk away from patterns that looks familiar, especially if it causes you pain or discomfort. Sometimes breaking up some friendship is not always the way. Sometimes adopt or adapt a healthy communication style to help resolve and talk about things in the friendship, because sometimes some people don't even know they are doing some certain things, or some certain behaviors they have do not resonate with you, or they are hurting you in some type of behavior, until you tell them and they can make a way, or they can find a way to make some adjustment to changing that behavior. Sometimes you don't have to always burn some friendship bridges. Some of them, they are resolvable, and the best way is to communicate. Communication is key. That way it gives a fresh perspective and gives room for growth in the friendship. And also know that sometimes some people can come into your life and they can either impact your life positively or negatively. And also, some family conflicts, it's of your best interest not to involve yourself in some family conflicts. If you can help try to resolve it, but if you can't, you can choose not to involve yourself in some conflicts, because some conflicts cannot be resolved, and the best way for you not to get involved in those family conflicts or in that type of conflict is to walk away or not get involved at all. You can also learn from people on how to resolve some generational conflicts, those that can be resolved, and try to see a way that it doesn't affect you and your generation. Sometimes you can talk about it with your family, but in the case or in the event where you can't have those sessions to talk about some conflicts with your family, you can choose not to get involved in that conflict. Make sure the conflict does not affect you and your generation, because the conflict did not start with you. It's something that has been in the generation or that has been in your family history for a long time, and the best way is not to get involved in that conflict so it doesn't consume you. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did create it. Let me know your thoughts about generational patterns or cycles and how it has affected our society, or how it affects our lives, or how it affects our daily lives. And don't forget to also check out Serah Donald's video on generational patterns or generational cycles, especially how it affects our lives. And she's going to be talking about the money aspect. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not. Check out my other videos on my channel that you might find interesting, and stay connected.